go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Sorry for the little bit of a glitch there to get going here this morning, but computer problems sometimes are just unavoidable, and mine seem to be showing up more often than not now. Anyways, welcome to Growing Concerns for September 25th. We've got a few things on the agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about the crop/harvest update for the western side of the province, and then we're also going to get an update from Anastasia Kubinec on the Clubroot situation in Manitoba. There was an announcement made this week regarding a couple of fields that were found with clubroot in them, so Anastasia will be able to give us an update as to, I guess, where we go from there. Also, Mike Werbeliski is going to be on and give us a little bit of a weather update as to, what we can expect for the next few couple weeks here. And if we have time at the end, I've put some information together regarding the info on the crop acres, the top 10 varieties, and just some information from crop insurance that would be going into, I guess, Yield Manitoba 2014. So I guess with that, just a little bit of an update to get things going here. Like usual, I like to put up the chart regarding the, I guess, the weather over the past 7 days. We've been getting some rain. Interesting thing that is good to see is the growing degree days have definitely come up, and we're definitely seeing good growing degrees to help finish the crop off, I guess. Cool over the next little while here might create some interest, and I think just the whole fact that the lateness of the year is going to create some issues, especially in the western side of the province. Precipitation definitely higher than we've been getting on average, and that could be causing some of the issues for some of the crop extending over a longer period of time. We did really receive a bit of a frost here last Saturday, and this map here shows some of the areas that did receive some of the cooler temperatures. And even though it doesn't really show up specifically on the map here, we definitely have some issues with. There was some frost in some of the areas that maybe aren't exactly showing frost on this map, and I've got several areas throughout the southwest that definitely had some cooler temperatures than are maybe recorded. I don't think we got really low, but I think we were probably in that -1 for probably a couple hours throughout the evening, and so I think some of this area here did experience some frost, and you'll see that with some of the pictures I'll be showing a little bit later here. Just a little bit of an update on some of the storm situations that happened over the past week. There was a fairly good storm system that went through the Shoal Lake area and Shoal Lake East towards the Minzy area. There was some heavy hailstorms that went through and large winds. Some winds reported up to 100 kilometers an hour. So we did get some hail damage, and Elmer was able to provide us with some pictures from the area. You can see some of the canola swaths here that gotten hailed on. Here's an example of some of the damage done by the high winds that came through. So a lot of crops that were still out there, and canola was one of the biggest acres that's still out in the area. Definitely in that area or that stretch of the storm did receive some major problems or major effects from the storm. Again, just another picture of some of the damage from the hail, and you can definitely notice these swaths. They're definitely whiter on top, and then when you look at the bottom, you can see a lot of the shelling that has happened from those pods. So a lot of the yield going onto the ground and not being able to be gotten this fall here. So a little bit about the crops that are still out there. I'm going to talk mainly about the the two crops that we're probably most concerned with in the area regarding frost still. Corn is in the earlier seeded corn in the southwest here is probably in the late R5 stage, and late R5 stage is when you get the denting in the corn, like you see in the picture here, and then you see the milk line would be probably getting more to half, so more like this picture here where the milk line is starting to come down to about the halfway mark. And so that's kind of what we're seeing for some of the earlier seeded corn. When you look at some of the later seeded corn or some of our silage corn, we're definitely still in the high milk line area, and the milk line area is this, where when you crack open a cob, and it's best to crack open the cob from the center, and then look towards the plant, and you can see the milk line, and basically the white area down to the seed is where it is. So what you want to see is that line coming down, and I got some information here regarding silage. So this is some good information regarding the optimum time to take corn off for silage. I've been getting quite a few calls from producers regarding silage, especially some producers that tried growing grain corn for the first time and now are looking at maybe trying to sell it for silage, and so they're trying to determine when would be the best time to do it. So optimum harvest stage is when you get that half milk line to probably a quarter milk line. So we're still a fair ways away from that on most of it, and that gets you your best quality. And after any time before that, you're getting a lot of moisture in your pile, and you're going to get just not as good of a seal on your silage pile and not as good a quality of feed. Anytime later than that, you're getting too dry a product already, and you're just going to be just not getting as good a quality in the pile and not packing as well. So just again to show you the picture of what we're seeing in some of the silage out there, it's still a little ways away from being optimum. We're getting close with this field here, but still a little ways away. And just like I showed the last webinar with the chart regarding corn maturity, when you look at where we're sitting right now, we're definitely in the R5 stage where we're seeing the denting of the kernels, but we're still probably in the lower part of that. So we're still we're not quite at half milk line stage yet. So we're still just a little above that. So when you look at the days required before killing frost, we're still in that 10 to 15 days required before we can actually see that before we're going to start losing a lot of yield / quality if we're going to take it for grain harvest. And we're in the stage now where probably we could handle the frost and or we're close to being able to handle that frost to get it into the silage pile. This is what some of the corn looks like in the southwest here, so you can see that there has been some frost damage to it. The leaves over the last week here have definitely dried down a fair bit more since this picture was taken, but you can definitely see that some of the leaves are definitely drying off already from the frost. And this was taken in the Hamiota area, and as you can see where the frost damage was definitely a lot higher and a lot worse. We're seeing a lot of the plants showing the effects of the frost, so starting to dry down fairly good right now. And with reports of maybe a frost towards the end of the week here again, we could definitely see this change even more. A little bit about the soybean crop. We're definitely seeing it change quite a bit over the last week to 10 days in the southwest here. This is what we were seeing kind of before the frost hit, and we were seeing mainly the hilltops that were kind of drying out and starting to ripen in and develop. We were seeing a lot of pods that were still on the top pods that were green but were filling, and but not filling right properly, I guess is the word we're looking at. And you can see this one was taken one of the mornings when the frost was. You could actually see some frost on some of the pods there. Just another shot of what we were seeing on the hilltops before the frosts. This is what we're seeing after the frost. And I was at the plots at the McVet plots at Hamiota, and looking at some of the varieties, and this is one of the later maturing varieties. So you can see that we're getting pod fill on some of the upper pods, but we're also getting some pods that are pods that aren't filling. And this was taken shortly after the frost. And when you look at some of the crop, few days to a week after the frost, we're seeing situations where some of it, for some reason, is starting to lodge. Not quite sure what the issue is here, whether it be maybe too much nitrogen, but you can definitely see the damage occurring from what the damage did, what the frost did with the leaves. Also, when you look at some of these pods that are still up there, they're filling, but you know, they still have a ways to go, and probably not a lot of green material to help them finish filling. Got a picture here coming up of some of the pods that I was taking pictures of yesterday, and basically showing that they're not developing at all. You can see there's maybe one seed per pod on some of these. And this was one taken yesterday morning, and you can see a lot of those top pods starting to dry up and actually have no seed development in them at all. So I got a feeling that some of the soybean crop, that some of the yields that we were hoping for this spring, that they're probably not going to be, I guess, as high as we were hoping for in the Southwest here anyways, because we are losing a fair few pods right now. And these next two slides are just going to be a little bit more of some of the pods and some of the crop, and even the crop that seemed to struggle a little bit when we weren't getting that little bit of rain in August there, and we just didn't get a great stand. And so it'll be interesting to see what some of the yields. Some of the crop looks good, some of the crop is going to be questionable, and I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen in our canola crop, where we've seen some of the crops that are going to be yielding really well, and then some of them are going to be in that medium to average type yields. Flax-wise, Amir sent me some pictures regarding flax in the Hamiota area, and the flax, I think, has made it past most of the issues regarding frost. A lot of the balls are turning right now, and a lot of the seed is developed, so I think we're okay with it. Amir did get some pictures of some disease in flax, and this is looking like it's pasmo showing up in flax. You can see where you have some banding around the stem, and this is caused by, usually caused where it's it starts on the leaves, and then wherever the leaves are attached to the stem, when they fall off, it starts to band the stem, and it usually girdles the stem and usually causes premature ripening. And what we normally see is we see a lot of lodging in the fields where pasmo has become an issue, and those plants die off prematurely and just don't develop or produce the seed that they should. Spraying headline over the last few years has usually has slowed this issue down, and a lot of producers now that are growing flax is just a common practice for spraying the fungicide headline on it to control the pasmo. With that, I think that's going to be my update. I wanted to give Anastasia time to go through the presentation she has regarding Clubroot, because I think it's something that we're getting a lot of questions on. Anastasia?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just...
Great. Okay.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
You bet.
Okay, and you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Lionel, for inviting me to speak today on this media release that went out last Thursday. What I'm going to be talking about today is, it has to do with biosecurity and reducing the movement of soil-borne pests. And with this presentation specifically, I'm going to talk about Clubroot. Other soil-borne pests for disease-wise would be soybean cyst nematode, and then other pests are definitely weed seeds and other things too. This is a presentation that our pathologist Holly Dirksen had put together, and myself in May. It's modified from something we actually presented to all NAFRI staff. and then I've just updated it a little bit more with more producer information. So just a quick outline of what I'm going to go through. Why are we talking about Clubroot? What does the 2013 finding mean? And that's the media release that came out last Thursday. What has been done so far in regards to Clubroot and the 2 cases that did show up. How can you protect your farm from outside entry of this pest and other soil-borne pests? Responsibility of industry and MAFRE, and how to stop the spread within your farm or reduce the concentration of Clubroot in the fields that you have. So why are we talking about this? The status of Clubroot in Manitoba has changed. We can no longer be considered free of Clubroot. We found 2 fields that had Clubroot symptoms. It's supposed to say 2013, not 2012. And these are plant symptoms in fields. They were very minor, but we did have them tested for DNA, and they both came back as positive. We've also found Clubroot DNA in the soil in 2012. We had 6 samples, and in 2011 we had 2. In those samples, they were very minor. The spore concentration wasn't even there to produce symptoms in fields, but it was showing up in the fields. As well, there has been Clubroot symptoms in field found in Saskatchewan in 2011. We haven't heard of what's going on there this year in 2013. And in Alberta, there's been symptoms showing up in fields since 2003. In 2012, the status was there's 1,064 fields that had shown Clubroot to show up. And this year I'm told by their canola specialist that that may double for 2013. They had a very wet spring, and they have found quite a few more fields that are showing Clubroot. So what does this new status mean to Manitoba? In the past, there was news releases that went out in spring 2012, spring 2013, talking about the 2011 and 12 crop. There was announcements where we said we had Clubroot DNA found in the soil, but no symptoms on plants. And as I said before, the DNA concentrations were extremely low, and they were not able to cause symptoms in the field. So we thought, okay, we have it, it's at extremely low levels, we are maybe not going to see it in the field and have symptoms for quite a few years, which made us happier. But this year, there was the discovery of the 2 fields. One was through our canola disease survey that we do this year, and one was from a producer who was swathing his canola field and saw a patch of canola that was diseased and did not look right, and started pulling up plants and wasn't sure what was going on, and then called us in to come and take a look. So the discovery of the symptoms on plants in field indicates that the concentration in some fields are high enough to cause the symptoms. So this is just an example of what we saw in the field here in Manitoba. These 2 pictures are taken from the 2 fields where we did find the symptoms this year. So as you can see, we have a minor gall here, and that's what they call these bumps on the roots. And then here we had more formation of galls on the plants. So what we did was the plants, we brought them into our crop diagnostic lab. We weren't quite sure what was going on, so then we sent them on to another lab in Alberta that does have the appropriate equipment that can grind down the root samples and actually tell us if the Clubroot DNA is there. So what does this mean? Manitoba farms have the potential to develop Clubroot. There's a lot of talk about pH, and the pH in Manitoba is not suitable for Clubroot. That is wrong. Our pH is just fine for developing Clubroot. And the other thing, guys will say, Clubroot is just an Alberta problem. It is not an Alberta problem. We have seen it in Saskatchewan, and we are now seeing it in Manitoba. So unfortunately, this tells us that the disease can develop here, and we do have the disease here. The distribution of where we found the plants with the symptoms and where we are finding the DNA in the soil is not in one particular area in Manitoba. The spread is sporadically right across the province. Therefore, we are not disclosing the locations, and we would like you to assume that it's within 50 kilometers of your farm. I know it would be great to say it is in this RM or close to this town, but where we are finding it throughout the province of Manitoba to us indicates that it probably is at low levels in a number of areas, and we would like all producers and industry to start taking precautions to try and reduce the spread of clubroot and other soil-borne pests like this one. So what has been done so far? The producers have been notified and they have been visited. All of their other canola fields have been inspected for symptoms, and we did not find any, only in these two particular fields. These producers have then notified their neighbors, custom applicator providers, RM counselors, etc., to let them know that they have this issue about movement of soil off their field and other people's fields. If a guy is coming in to do custom spraying application, extra precautions he's going to have to take in and out of these fields. Soil samples have been collected from all of the producers' other fields that he works, and they are being analyzed for further testing for clubroot DNA in the soil. And we are starting to work on management plans with them, starting for fall 2013, if they are cultivating or working their land, and onward for these particular fields, and then for their farm as a whole. A media release went out on the afternoon of September 19th. It can be found on the Government of Manitoba main page if you look in news releases, and it basically just says that we found 2 plants with symptoms. An email was sent out notifying all chemical companies, seed companies, field scouts, marketing representatives, outlining the fact that we have found symptoms on plants and the proper procedures of when entering and exiting growers' fields. And this is based on the Canola Council of Canada's protocols. All these companies have been notified in the past too when we were finding clubroot DNA in the soil, but we have notified them all again to tell them about the plant symptoms. These procedures also apply to MAFRE staff, and MAFRE staff has had a webinar very similar to this one that has outlined a lot of the protocols. So from a grower's point of view is you need to protect your own field. There are no interprovincial border patrol looking for clubroot, so growers must patrol the borders of their own farms. And we would like people to think of plant biosecurity very similar to animal biosecurity. A hog farmer would not let anybody off the street walk into his barn. Why would you let a random stranger walk into your field? So what can you do? First of all, avoid importing straw, hay, green feed, silage, or manure from infested or suspicious areas. If you can use your own, that is great. If you are going to buy it from somebody else, ask them about the status of their farm, if they've ever seen clubroot, and just make sure that you're comfortable with what you're getting from them. Avoid common untreated seed. This includes canola, cereals, and pulses. Earth tag on seed from infested fields, so the dust from that field could introduce resting spores into clean fields. Potato production is a big one. If you are a potato producer and you are buying your seed, be very careful where you're buying your seed. Ask the producer if he's ever had clubroot on his land, what their status is before you do get that potato seed, because potato seed does have a lot of earth tag on it. But the risk of spreading clubroot through contaminated seed, plant materials is much lower than the risk of transporting contaminated soil on field equipment. And what I'm going to talk about next is really the main thing of how we can reduce the movement of the soil onto your farm, between your fields, and try and reduce the movement of clubroot. I see there's a question though.
Yes, Anastasia, we do have a question, and we do have a number of people from Saskatchewan on our webinar, and I guess the question is, do you have any information about the clubroot problem in Saskatchewan farms?
Not right now. We have talked to the Department of Agriculture in Saskatchewan, and they've said that they do not have all their results together yet, but they will in the next couple of weeks. So right now we don't know quite what's going on there.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so how to protect your fields. Any off-farm machinery must be cleaned before entering the fields. And this has to do with if you hire somebody to do custom seeding, fertilization, if they're coming in to do custom spraying, if they're doing soil sampling, anything where it's not your piece of machinery or a piece of machinery that you use very frequently is coming onto your land, make sure it's being cleaned. It is your right as a producer to make sure that you are requesting that it is cleaned and to the level of cleanliness that you would like it to be cleaned to. All oil field equipment, custom applicators, utility workers, hunters, ATVers, etc. This can be something that you do request from them. Now, with your own machinery, cleaning it, especially tillage equipment, seed equipment, etc., between fields to get rid of those dirt clumps is really key in reducing the movement of soil and also reducing the movement of pests. Just talking to my counterpart in Alberta, he said most of the clubroot is moved in the springtime when field conditions are moist or wet, and the biggest machinery that they see moving all that soil is usually that tillage equipment or the seeding equipment. Also, when you're buying used machinery, make sure that it is thoroughly cleaned before coming onto your farm. So if you picked something up at auction, make sure you're going through it before you actually get it into the field. If it's got dirt on it, knock off those dirt clumps. Blow it off with an air compressor, blow it off with, or clean it off with water. Clean it off with bleach. Make sure it's really clean before it's coming into your land because you don't necessarily know what the field conditions were like and what kind of pests the producer had that you bought it from. Scout. This is extremely important. Check out any suspicious looking areas of premature ripening, any plants, canola samples that look really funny. Just like the producer that did bring the plants in to us, it was when he was out swathing and he just had a patch that just looked really strange. Send your samples into the MAFRE Diagnostic Lab. You can do them through your GO office. MAFRE will keep all submissions confidential. One thing that we do not have in Manitoba but they have in Saskatchewan and Alberta is Clubroot is not in our Pest Act. So that means that if you are submitting samples to MAFRE and they do come back positive, we do not have to disclose the location of where they are. We do try to keep this all confidential and we are working with the producers that do have it to try and work towards a management plan. And as I said, it is confidential. So if you are concerned about clubroot on your own farm, you don't necessarily want to submit it through MAFRE, no worries. You can send plant and soil samples off to analysis for yourself at 2020 Seeds Lab, which is in Kaskiw, Alberta, BioVision Seed Labs, which is in Edmonton, and then Discovery Seed Labs, which is in Saskatchewan. There is a fee associated with it. I think plant samples are about $80 to get analyzed, and soil is about $100. If you are going to collect soil, collect about 2.5 cups from the top 5 centimeters. Sample around the major approaches and the entry into the field. So why we're talking about that is what they have found in the University of Alberta is they tend to find the highest concentration of spores by the entrance. So here's our producer's entrance, and as you can see here, extremely high right around the entrance, and then it gets lower and lower and lower. And what they have found in Alberta is don't take it just as you're walking into the field. Go in probably about 50 paces and go to your right, because that tends to be the way that producers, and maybe, or you'll know this from your own farm, how do you bring that machinery onto your land? You go in, and which way do you normally turn? You want to make sure that you are sampling where the potential of most of the dirt from potentially another field has dropped off onto your field. Now I want to talk a little bit more about machinery sanitation. This is something we have been talking about for a couple of years. There is a guide that is out. It's put out by the Canola Council of Canada. You can find it right online, and it talks about managing clubroot and equipment sanitation. These are kind of just the Coles notes. If you want more details, definitely download that off from the Canola Council website. So as I said before, soil transport by machinery is the most common way soil-borne pests are transferred from field to field. Other methods include wind and water erosion, but we want to focus more on what we can control. We can't necessarily control how much the wind is blowing and how much soil is moving, and with water erosion. So there's 3 steps to successful sanitation of your equipment. First of all is the rough cleaning. Knocking the dirt clumps off of your machinery. Using a scraper or a wire brush to scrape and remove loose soil from openers, tires, and wheels. So if you have a machine tractor that looks like this after you've been seeding or cultivating, make sure you're knocking off those nice big dirt clumps, giving it a really rough cleaning and trying to get off the majority of the soil that you can. So step 2 is the fine cleaning. Using a pressure washer and or air compressor to remove all the soil from the hard to reach places. It might be good to go with the air compressor first and then using the pressure washer. So you're trying to blow off the big clumps and then you're using that water to kind of clean them off. So this is an example of what you might do there. This step removes 99% of the soil. The first step, just with the rough cleaning, removes 90% of the soil. So even just with that first rough cleaning step, which you may be doing a lot of that already, moving from field to field as you're pulling onto the highway and getting rid of those dirt clumps, you've probably removed a majority of the soil. With the second step, with the fine cleaning, actually you'll probably have gotten a huge majority of all the soil and you've reduced your risk quite a large extent just by doing these first 2 steps. Step number 3 is disinfection. This is using a bleach solution on all openers, tires, and wheels. I know bleach is highly corrosive, especially if you have a bit of a rust spot, but basic household bleach has been found to be the most effective sanitation product to try and kill clubroot. Backpack sprayers work well. If you have one of those little yard sprayers that you pump it off and you're using your to spray weeds in the yard, you can use that as well and just give it a fine misting coating. Areas should remain wet for 15 to 20 minutes. This gives the bleach enough time to kill off the clubroot. But this step alone is not effective. So if you have that really dirty machine, it's full of dirt, and you just spray it with bleach, you're not going to really do yourself any benefit. Using the 3 steps in sequence, where you're doing that rough cleaning, then the fine cleaning, then the disinfection, that will get almost 100% of those scores. So the question always comes is, you want me to do what? Spring is very crunched, we know that, but the decision lies within the individual. What do you have time for? Maybe you have a field that does have clubroot. Maybe when you're moving out of that field, that is the field where you're going through all 3 steps, but maybe in the majority of your farm, you only have time to do the rough cleaning. That is up to you. So yeah, the decision lies with you as the individual, but some individuals go above and beyond. You do have a picture here of where an agronomist has attached sprayer nozzles to her wheel wells. So she's making sure that she is spraying and disinfecting before going into any other producer's fields. So as an industry person and protecting her business, that is a decision that she has made, and that is something she has done extra. So really, you do have to start somewhere. As I said, kicking dirt clumps off the machinery before leaving the field is a good start. And if you are an effective grower, and if you do have fields that do have clubroot, the more intensive sanitation is recommended. Saving that effective field for last if possible, that'll help save time during your busy seasons. So biosecurity is an increasingly important issue. It is everybody's responsibility to sustain profitability and land value, keeping industry sustainable and competitive with other markets. And growers need to understand and measure the risk and implement management practices proactively. So I've talked about what the grower can do. These are things that having industry people coming onto your land, whether it be your custom app guy, oil fields, and even Mafre or somebody else who's just coming to help you inspect a problem that you have on your land. These are some responsibilities that we do have as industry, but things that you can kind of keep in mind too and ask people coming onto your land to do. So from us as industry and Mafre, we need to ask permission before we enter your field. we need to let you know that we're following proper sanitation procedures. And whenever possible, we should be performing field visits on foot. We, as MAFRE staff, will be parking our vehicles on the road or the approach. As I said, the field entry point is the most likely infected area of the field. You may have seen people running around with these plastic booties this summer, or you may have gone to tours where you've been asked to wear the plastic booties. They are disposable. You wear them over your existing footwear and then properly dispose them upon exit from the field. Or wearing rubber-soled shoes or boots that can be scraped, clean, washed, and disinfected before the next visit. And the reason why we're doing this is it's a small thing, but it does help reduce the amount of soil that's moving from field to field. I'm sure Lionel, I know Lionel, walks many, many, many fields in the summertime, and it just helps reduce the dirt going from field to field. I myself, I wear the plastic booties all the time. It is a pain, but you definitely are surprised after you pull them off how much dirt or whatever is stuck on the bottom of them. If doing a field inspection with growers, vehicle travel is required. Traveling in the grower's vehicle, if possible, is recommended. And if your vehicle has to be driven through the fields, this would be maybe your agronomist coming through the field and is likely to have picked up soil, it should be washed in the nearest car wash before visiting another field. Washing the tires, wheels, and undercarriage to try and make sure you get rid of all that dirt. Hand tools that are used in the field, so this could be your soil sampling people that are coming in there. They need to be washed and disinfected as well, going from field to field. It may be that the soil sampler talks to you as a producer and says, you know, I'm doing 10 of your fields. Would it be okay if I clean off, you know, I'll clean off coming into the first field. Is it okay if I do your whole farm and then I'll disinfect afterwards? That's something that you can talk about together. If that works for both of you guys, that's great, but you do need to have that conversation. And again, they're going to need to clean out the chunks of soil and cleaning with that bleach solution or another disinfecting solution to make sure that they're getting rid of most of those spores. Cleaning your hands with hand sanitizer. You would be surprised going in and out of fields how dirty your hands get. And refraining from visiting fields when they're muddy, which can be a bit of an issue in Manitoba in the spring because it always tends to be muddy. So reducing the spread within your farm. So say you have found clubroot on your farm, you suspect clubroot on your farm, or another soil-borne pest. Specifically for clubroot, there are a number of clubroot-resistant varieties. You can go to the www.clubroot.ca website. 45H29, which is very popular in Manitoba, is clubroot resistant. Bayer has a new clubroot resistant one out. Monsanto has a couple of clubroot resistant ones out. Cantera has a clubroot resistant variety. Brett Young has a clubroot resistant variety. It doesn't matter who you prefer for your canola supplier, they probably have a clubroot resistant variety. And if you think you have clubroot, definitely use that variety. Even if you're concerned, you can use a clubroot resistant variety. They tend to have all the main attributes that we're looking for in our canola. They're hybrids, they're high yield, they're herbicide tolerant, and they have the black egg resistance to boot. So they are very good varieties, and they are accessible that we could use in Manitoba. Use longer rotation breaks between your canola, 3 years or more. Canola wheat, canola wheat, canola wheat, if you have clubroot, is going to build that spore load in your soil. Not only are you going to have issues with potentially blackleg, but you're going to build the spore load for your clubroot too and potentially have issues and fairly a good infection of clubroot in your canola before you even realize it. If you do use the longer rotations though, it does help reduce the concentration from year after year after year. Also controlling volunteer canola and cruciferous weeds, so that would be your wild mustard, shepherd's curse, and stinkweed. They are all hosts for clubroot. So when you do not have a canola crop, so in your wheat and your soybeans and your corn and your peas and your flax, whatever else, try and make sure you are controlling those weeds so that in those years that you are outside of canola, you don't have those hosts in there as weeds, and in those years you can start to reduce that spore load in those soils for the next time you put canola in there. Use direct seeding and other soil conservation practices to try and reduce the erosion. So we talked about machinery and then the wind and the water erosion. Those are ways that you can try and reduce your wind and water erosion. What else? CFIA has developed this farm-level biosecurity standards to help minimize and control the introduction and spread of plant pests. It has been developed with people out of Manitoba as well as across Western Canada and Canada. It is very thorough. It does have in there a self-assessment for farmers to do to try and assess your risk for all biosecurity issues having to do with crops, not just Clubroot and not just some of the other ones. It is very good. You can pick them up at your local MAPRE offices. We do have a number of boxes, and they may be used in the future with some of the training sessions that MAPRE will be putting on this fall and winter. There's also some resources out there that you can access. The Canola Council of Canada, as I mentioned, that www.clubroot.ca website. It has a lot of information on there with varieties that do have the Clubroot resistance. It does have a more thorough information on how to clean machinery, things to expect from your service providers coming onto your land. If you do have oil field equipment on your land, some of the things that they're supposed to be doing. It is a really good source of information. Also, CFIA has a crop biosecurity website. If you are interested in that, it does have that self-assessment. It has the booklet that I showed in the last slide. You can all access that at that one. So if there's any questions or comments, I know it's a lot of information that I've provided in the past 20 minutes or so. I think there is time to do a few here, but also I am available. I work in the Crops Knowledge Center in Carmen. You have my email address there. It's my first name, my last name @gov.mb.ca, and you also have my cell number. So that cell number, I have it on pretty much most of the time. And I am available if you do have phone calls. You can call me personally. I do keep everything confidential. If you are wondering about plants, you can come out and take a look. But even just general questions about clubroot or other soil-borne pests, I am willing to answer them.
Okay, Anastasia, I do have some questions here. Are we checking neighboring fields where clubroot was found?
Yes. Once we've identified clubroot in a field, we are checking the neighboring fields. If it is that producer's field, no problem. We already have that permission to go in there. If it is one of his neighbor's fields, though, the producer first of all has to inform the neighbor of the issue, and then I get permission from the neighbor to go and check their field as well.
Okay, good. And you may have answered this to some extent, but can infested rainwater from adjoining fields spread the disease to healthy fields? If yes, what can be done about this?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure about that. When they talk about water moving it, they're usually meaning maybe it's runoff from ditches going across fields, or streams kind of running through a number of fields that run in the spring but maybe don't run throughout the year. I don't really know if they've actually tested the rainwater to see if the spores are held within that rain that are splashing. This is a little bit, I know with other diseases we talk about blackleg, where it's a rain splash disease, and it splashes and picks up those spores and then moves them to adjacent plants. I'm not sure if that's the way with clubroot because it is in the soil, so you'd probably have to get some pretty intense rain to be splashing in that soil and then taking those soil particles and moving them into another field.
Okay, so I think this question is kind of similar, only it's talking about weed seeds. So, sorry, I'm just going to, so I guess they're asking, so can clubroot be spread from weed seeds from one field to another?
There is the potential for that. If there is earth tag or dirt contained on those weed seeds could potentially spread the clubroot because the soil is adhered to the weed seeds and then the spores are within that soil. It's all about the soil in this case. Any movement of soil, however, is a potential way to move clubroot.
Okay, and now it's, let me see, what percentage of growers in Alberta have adopted this type of intensive protocol, And has the problem in Alberta continued to spread?
The growers that are within the county that do have clubroot found, from what I've been told, the majority of them have adopted these protocols to try and protect themselves from getting clubroot on their own land. Unfortunately, though, the issue of clubroot has spread. It spread from a single field where it was found to, as you saw there, that was in 2003. In 2012, it's now known to be on over 1,000 fields. The spread of it, though, maybe because producers weren't aware that they did have the disease, and then it has progressed along and now they're just seeing it. But yeah, with Alberta, within 10 years, it has spread quite a large distance.
Okay, and I have a comment here from one of MAFRE's FPAs in that we need to encourage fall control of winter annuals in fall cereals like stinkweed, shepherd's purse, and etc. Do you have any comments with that as well?
Yeah, that is a very good point. If you do have winter cereal crops in the ground right now, and you are seeing some of those winter annuals in there, if you can control them now, that's great, because then they're not going to be there next spring. With clubroot, you do need to have that susceptible host in the soil to actually get the clubroot disease, and the more of those hosts that you have in there, regardless of the timeline, they can be increasing the spore load in there. So as soon as you can control those winter annual, shepherd's purse, stinkweed, the better. And volunteer canola and wild mustard in the spring, as well as those winter annuals if they've overwintered into the spring.
Okay, great, Anastasia. I don't have any more questions. Lionel, did you have any questions?
Actually, I did have one for you, Anastasia. Regarding the varieties that are resistant to clubroot, what is their rating of resistance? Is it similar to, say, our rating for blackleg? I guess what I'm wondering is if you grow a resistant variety and you have, say, clubroot, or you think you might have clubroot, what is the potential of still having it in your field? Are those varieties like completely resistant, or is it just like a partial resistance? Or can you make a comment like that?
For sure. It is very similar to what we talk with blackleg. It's not immune. It's just tolerant. So you are growing X variety that has clubroot tolerance in your field and you have clubroot. That isn't necessarily going to mean that you don't have any clubroot in that field. You may have it at very, very low levels. The resistance that we do have in the clubroot resistant varieties right now is very good. One thing that they do recommend, though, if you are going to be growing clubroot resistant varieties a number of years in a similar field, that you are rotating those resistance, because the resistance that Monsanto has is different from the one that Bayer has, which is different than the one that Pioneer has. And that'll help reduce any resistance breakdown. And that is something they are concerned about in Alberta. So trials that they've done at the University of Alberta, they put those resistant varieties into soil and they've measured the spore loads going into that crop and then coming out of that crop, and they do find that they are not increasing when you're growing that clubroot resistant variety or tolerant variety, but they don't necessarily decrease. But that means for that year growing that variety, you're probably not going to get those galls on the roots, and you're probably not going to have very much yield loss, if any.
Okay, well, that was sounds great, Anastasia. That was a lot of really good information. It's I know there's lots there in a short period of time, but it's nice to get it out there. So thanks for being able to come on with short notice.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And if there's any questions, yeah, please contact me.
Okay, being that we're looking at time-wise here of getting close to being done for today, I'm just going to maybe go through a couple slides at the end that I had put together regarding some of the yield or acreage breakdown of some of the crops and some of the varieties that I've been growing this past year, and the acres we're looking at compared to say last year. So just a little bit of some notes regarding it. Basically that I can spend a lot of time going through a lot of this, so what I'll do is I'm going to kind of break it down into just some of the charts and some of the major facts, and then if you're interested in, you can come back and read through the stuff. But looking at our major crops, majority of our crops are growing is going to be our hard red wheat crops, and then we've got some of our winter wheats, and then our other wheats, which are our soft whites and our extra strongs and our unregistered varieties, and basically our feed wheat type products. So the majority of the wheat growing in Manitoba here is going to be on the hard red spring varieties. And when you look at, I found this chart to be very interesting. It had a breakdown of 2012 compared to 2013. And you look at our wheat acres, we're up about almost 500,000 acres. Winter wheat, we were up by about 31,000 acres, but that number is not going to reflect the acres that were harvested because we're probably going to be down after the spring we had and the loss of acres to spring with the winter kill. So one that we definitely see an increase into is also our unregistered varieties, and that's with more people looking at growing. Some of the varieties are the higher yielding varieties, and I think as we go on, I think some of these numbers might come up, but you can see that our wheat acres went up at approximately 500,000 acre increase this year, with the majority of that being in the hard red. Out of the hard red spring wheats, we've got the variety Carberry that has shown to be the one that's taken the majority of the acres this year. At about 31 or almost 32% of the acres went to be Carberry. Glen, it's one of the ones that is second for the acres, and Harvest, which was the top variety in 2012, has dropped to about 13%. Cane is fourth, about 6.5%, and then we got the 859 CL, the typical variety, which is at about 5% of the acres. So those are the top 5 red spring wheat varieties for Manitoba for this coming year, or for this past year. So you can definitely see where Carberry has come along a long way. It's got a good straw strength. Producers are saying that it stands well, has good yield potential, and so I think it's got a good claim for that first place this year anyways. Rounding out the other 5 varieties, Stanley, Domain, Upmost, Go, and Berry. You can see as some of the older varieties start to lose their acres, like Domain and Berry, they're starting to drop to the bottom of the top 10, and I can see in a few years they'll be gone. And some of the newer varieties that some producers are growing that aren't in the top 10, they make up for about 11% of the acres, but they're just not high enough numbers to make it into the top 10. So there are definitely newer varieties coming up that are going to be up there shortly. And here's a breakdown of the acres between all of them, and you can see where that breakdown of that 77% would go to for each of them. So a little bit about barley. There's about just under 500,000 acres of barley in, with the top 5 varieties being Conlon, Newdale, Celebration, Austinson, and Champion. And so those would be the top 5. When you look at oats, there was about 350,000 acres, with Cirrus, Summit, Furlong, Pinnacle, and Legette being the top 5 varieties of oats growing there. Winter wheat, just a couple, and this was more for last week. So actually with that, I think we're probably going to end the webinar. I just wanted to put this in last week as our deadline for seeding winter wheat was coming up, and I had this one slide on from last week. So I guess with that, we'll end the webinar for this week, and I'd like to thank everybody for participating. This was scheduled to be our last webinar for the year, and with that, I guess I'd like to thank all the people that have come on and presented on the webinars, as well as the
the audience that we've been getting. It's the amount of people that have been coming on is growing, which is great. We're getting more and more interest, which makes it worthwhile doing. So I'd like to thank everybody for that. And we might be doing the odd one throughout the wintertime, and you'll get an email regarding it, so you'll be given good enough notice that there'll be one coming up, especially if there's more issues like something like Clubroot or something else that comes up over the next while. So I guess with that, I'd like to thank everybody, and thanks for attending today, and that'll end the webinar for today.